Okay, hello chess players. In this video, I want to talk about something that happens in a lot of chess games. Like you get an advantage, maybe a material advantage, maybe a dynamic one, and then you reach a point where in order to build that advantage, you have to give up something. Like usually material. Usually like you have to give up material for time. It's very rare, but like sometimes you do it the other way around. Sometimes you give up some of your, time. Sometimes you take a little bit of time to secure extra material. But a lot of times, especially in chess games where people are trying to get dynamic counterplay, usually you have to keep your activity level up pretty high. And that usually involves like just giving up a pawn or even giving up two pawns to press your advantage even further and try to win the game. And I'm going to show you a game today that's going to be a really good example of that and just try to kind of hammer home the fact that sometimes in chess you have to give some material back. Anyways, if you like content like this, want to see more of it, please hit that subscribe button and click on your notification icon. So this was Fischer versus Mikhail Tal. This was played in Bled all the way back in 1961. It went e4 c5 knight of 3, and then Tal actually made a little bit of a theory mistake here. After g3, he played the move knight of 6, which is sort of a question mark move because it allows the knight to come to b5 with the bishop also coming to f4. So it allows both of those moves in combination. That's why the move a6 is just a little bit better in this position than knight of 6. And Fischer took full advantage. He immediately plays knight b5, queen to b8, and now bishop f4. So now Fischer is pretty confident that he has some sort of advantage in this position. He's pretty sure he's a little bit better. But he's not playing against just a regular guy who might be comfortable playing something like e5 and then bishop g5 and just accepting the fact that, okay, white's obviously quite a bit better in this position. White has some sort of major advantage here. Instead, Tal decides to complicate the issue by immediately playing knight e5. Now, at this point, Fischer needs to be very precise. He needs to keep his activity up. He's not playing against a regular opponent. He's playing against a guy like Tal. So he immediately plays bishop e2. This is critical. He doesn't play bishop g2 because that takes too much time, and it doesn't put the bishop in the right spot. He needs to cover the g4 square. He needs to prepare to play queen d4. He's setting everything up. So then we have bishop c5, which is aimed specifically against this queen d4 threat, which was a huge threat against almost any other move, including a6. Queen d4 was coming with tempo, castles queenside, etc., etc. So now Fischer plays very accurately. First, he gives up his pin. He plays bishop takes e5. So he's actually giving up something positional here. He's giving up a permanent pin on the knight, against the queen, which was kind of a big deal. But he's doing it to gain time and tempo and to gain something concrete. So first, he's giving up a positional idea for something concrete. So we have queen e5, and then here's the idea, f4, queen b8, e5. So he's gaining this really critical space, and he's, having a lot of threats coming forward. Knight e4 is a possibility now. So all this stuff is happening. Black doesn't want to let knight e4 with knight d6 take place, so he plays a6 to counterattack. And then we have pawn takes on f6, takes on b5, and then takes on g7. So now Fischer is effectively up material, but more importantly, he has a really strong position. And whenever you feel like you have an advantage, like if you, and at this point, Fischer felt like he had a major advantage, you have to identify why you have that advantage. That's why we never assess positions as just winning or losing. If Fischer assessed this position as winning, he might try to simply coddle all of his material. He might go, hey, I'm up a pawn, and I should coddle my material and never lose it, and then I'll be okay. Instead of that, he understood why he was better. He's better because he has an aggressive dynamic position. He's better because his opponent has weaknesses. He's better because he has attacking chances. And yes, he has an advantage because he's up a pawn and he's maybe about to win another one. So we have rook g8, knight e4, again, keeping up the pressure. Bishop to e7, queen d4. This is critical. He's holding his pawn temporarily, but more importantly, he's setting up attacking ideas with knight f6, also setting up the idea of winning this pawn with bishop takes b5. So Tal activates his rook. He plays rook to a4, and then we have knight to f6, which is basically forced. The queen was attacked. Bishop takes f6, and then queen f6. So now the queen's on a relatively safe square. This pawn is at least temporarily secure. We have another threat of winning a pawn, and now Tal gets active again with queen c7. This is a hard position. And it's a position that I think separates really strong players from club players. If I gave this position to a club player, I think the majority of club players would play something really passive and really sedate. They would take one look at the position and go, I'm doing really good here. I should have an advantage. Look at this pawn on g7. Look at my extra development. Look at, black not being able to move his bishop. They would understand that they have an advantage, but they would probably give most of it away by playing something like bishop to d3 and just trying to mechanically hold everything. Fischer didn't do that at all. he castled queenside and just kept up the pressure on the position. He understood that his advantage in this position was activity. This gives up a pawn. It just gives up a pawn on a2. He's fine with this. The tempo is more valuable than the pawn here. His advantage is that this bishop is out of play, and this rook is out of play while it's defending against this pawn. So we have rook a2, king b1, and then we have rook to a6, and then we have bishop takes b5. So now we're taking this pawn with tempo, so of course we take it. And then we have rook to b6, bishop back to d3, and now we have e5. And this is the most critical moment of the game. I think if I gave this position to just about any club player, they would assess the position. They would say, I'm winning, because they have an extra pawn or something. And they do it. They have a good position. But this is why we don't assess positions in winning or losing. Because as soon as you assess this position as being winning, queen e5 looks good. Because you're thinking, if I'm winning, how could it be wrong to exchange queens and win a pawn? It's absolutely wrong. Like black will probably draw the game. Like queen e5, pawn e5, and then rook g7, and you really don't have much of an advantage at that point. And Fischer understood that. He understood, okay, look, I have an advantage. Here's why. And that's why you use those words. I have an advantage. Because if you say I have an advantage, you have to label it. You have to understand where your advantage is. Your advantage is that you have more space. You have pieces on strong squares. This rook is stuck on g8. This pawn on g7 is very, very dangerous. And you don't want to lose that. You don't want to lose that pawn on g7. So that means he did not reply with queen takes c5. He played pawn captures e5. And this maintained his advantage because now bishop h7 is still a threat. He's sacrificing his queen. Rook takes queen, pawn takes queen. But now bishop h7 is huge. These pawns are extremely dangerous. This king is very, very, very uncomfortable. So now all this stuff is going on, and it's nearly impossible for black to defend. And if he hadn't played this way, Tal definitely would have saved the game. This is Tal we're talking about. This isn't some random player. So here we have queen c5 got played, bishop takes h7. We have queen g5, then bishop takes g8, queen takes g7, rook h to f1, queen captures g7, bishop f7, king to d8, and then bishop to e6. And it's two rooks versus the queen in this position. More importantly, black is going to have a difficult time activating the rest of his pieces, and white is going to have a couple of pass pawns that are very, very dangerous. So Fischer's keeping all of this in mind, and he finds a way to improve his position and finish the game. We have queen h6, bishop takes d7, bishop takes d7, rook f7. So we make this exchange, we win this piece, we're going to get two rooks on the 7th, and now, of course, our big advantage is that we have all these extra pawns. And after a few more moves, Fischer manages to consolidate all of the pawns. Tal should, of course, keep playing because, there's always some chance of perpetual or something else. But after a few more moves, it becomes really, really obvious that Fischer isn't going to make some major mistake. And it also becomes really, really obvious that either these pawns are going to advance or this king is going to get stuck in some sort of mating net. So an example would be something like, king g7, rook a7, king g8, and then simply rook on d to d7. Both rooks are on the 7th rank. This pawn can advance to g6. And then once that happens, there's too many mating threats, and there's too many threats against the black queen. And there's not going to be any prospect of a perpetual with the king safely tucked behind those pawns. And that's how you take a position where you have an advantage, turn it into a major advantage, turn it into a decisive advantage, and eventually turn it into a win against very strong players, keeping in mind that sometimes you have to give something back. Sometimes you have to give the material back to maintain wherever your advantage is actually coming from. And that's what you need to keep your eye on. You need to keep your eye on exactly where your advantage is and how you got your advantage, and you need to keep that advantage. And that's how you win games. Anyways, I hope you found this video helpful, useful, and learned something new about chess. Thank you very much for watching.